Good afternoon, thanks for clicking on to the UK Europe video blog for today. It is the 13th of November, of course it's Remembrance Sunday as well, a time to reflect of loved ones of course, and we are looking at a very persistent pattern across the continent at the moment. It is very stuck in place. We're remaining very mild across the UK and across the majority of Western Europe, through France, through the UK, through Belgium, Netherlands, up into Scandinavia as well, although we're seeing some subtle changes to cooler conditions across parts of Norway, Sweden and Finland. The remaining persistent cold continues across eastern parts of Europe, from Russia down through Turkey, and it's unfortunately a very tough situation that the folks of Van and surrounding areas of eastern Turkey are facing these days. We've seen the first snowfall that's blanketed the region, of course, has been decimated by this recent earthquake, as well as the one about 3 weeks ago as well. So it's a tough situation. My heart really does go out to the folks around that region of the country. It's of course a poorer part of the world as well. And folks are having to survive with probably little food, as well as poor toilet facilities, and of course the lack of heat. Folks are having to survive in tents. And this here, folks, off the BBC website, is basically the temperatures that folks across Van are facing. -5 today for a high, -8 for a low. Tomorrow, Monday, -5 for a high, but notice light snowfall and a low of -6 Celsius. And of course, later on through the week, we're talking about basically temperatures below freezing as well. Of course, where it's a high elevated area as well, but it's exposed very much to the trough, the cold northerly winds that are blowing down from Russia at the moment. So it's a very, very tough situation for the folks of Van and indeed the remainder of that region at the moment. It really is a pretty tough situation indeed. We are seeing as well a batch of unsettled weather, the next Atlantic system riding through Portugal, through Spain, and that will press eastwards. We're going to be seeing very, very heavy pulses of rain push through. Of course, all the Atlantic weather traffic, so to speak, at the moment is actually taking a more southerly route through Iberia and through the Mediterranean. We're also seeing a batch of unsettled conditions as well across the eastern part of the Mediterranean, so places with the likes of Cyprus, even up into places like Athens as well. We're seeing temperatures really struggling. 10 Celsius is likely to be the high around Athens today. 10 Celsius below the normal for this time of year. We would normally be expecting a high of around 20 or perhaps even 21 in Athens. Highs, of course, 10 Celsius, very, very chilly air indeed. We're seeing, of course, the extent of that cold air covering the eastern part of the continent, and very fitting, of course, to the ideas that I've had. The cold, the average temperature now getting beaten down below normal will stretch all the way down towards the Mediterranean, eastern Mediterranean basin, while central and the western parts of Europe will continue to be mild, even if we do see a cold spell towards the latter part, maybe the latter week of this month. We will see temperatures far too warm throughout this month that even if you had a blast of extremely cold weather, it still would end November much above normal across the majority of the UK and the western continent. Even places like Scandinavia, where we're going to start to see the trough now drop down. We're going to be seeing the first snowfall probably for Oslo, Stockholm, into Helsinki as well in Finland. We're going to be seeing the first snowfall arrive for many parts of Scandinavia in the coming 5 to 7 days. A push of very cold air is going to start to show itself down through Scandinavia. We're actually seeing a pulsate effect of the cold air over eastern parts of Europe. We're getting a push of severe cold getting shoved west from Siberia, and then it kind of retreats back to the north, and then it pushes back in again. That seems to be the pattern, a push-pull of the cold air across the eastern part of the continent. We're going to start to see a weakening of the milder conditions across the UK as the rest of the month progresses. Now there is some signs, some hints there of cold and a trough, both to the northwest towards Greenland and the North Atlantic, as well as across Scandinavia, with two troughs with a kind of ridge in between. We are where that ridge in between is, basically, and it'll be interesting to see the latter part of the month whether we can see one of those troughs, whether it be to the northwest or to the northeast of the UK. Could that push the colder air in for the close of November? That'll be an interesting question. Certainly the North Atlantic Oscillation isn't flipping negative by any means. We've still got a pretty decent, persistent trough all over the North Atlantic, as well as Greenland as well. So certainly we're not seeing the ridging build over the North Atlantic to then push that cold air from Scandinavia southwestwards into the UK. We're just simply not seeing that just yet. Still early, really, to see that. But I do think with, of course, the warmer than normal North Atlantic waters, that tends to betray a bias towards ridging over the North Atlantic, and of course that would bode well with the colder weather for the UK. But one thing I want to point out to you folks is, if you notice the persistency in both the trough in the east and the ridge in the west, that tells me that the blocked up pattern has a persistency, a life cycle of perhaps 40 days or so before it then migrates and shifts, changes place basically, and position on the playing field. Now what I'm going to be looking for is that trough over the eastern part of Europe migrate westwards with time over the rest of perhaps about a month from now. I think we're going to be seeing the trough over the eastern part of Europe then position itself over, and finally its final position over Western Europe, of course, across the UK, through the Low Countries, France, and of course up into Scandinavia as well. And I think the eastern part of Europe will then see milder conditions, so that would be good news, of course, for places like eastern Turkey up through Russia as well. We'll be seeing a milder midpoint of winter. But that is, of course, about a month away from now, and I do expect a really strong flip to a negative North Atlantic Oscillation, as well as an Arctic Oscillation. Of course, an Arctic Oscillation flipping negative means all the built-up cold air will then push southwards, warming of the stratosphere as well. You get all that cold air from the upper level